Well, it's another day here at the yacht club, and I've done some serious thinking about what to do with my Boomkin. And I had a couple of notes on the YouTube website, not website, but YouTube. And I think what I'm going to do, or the process that I'm going to follow, is to basically assemble the Boomkin into its basic structure, put it back on the deck, and then drill the holes that are already in the Boomkin through the deck and fill the old ones that don't line up, that aren't plumb. So let's get at her. So we've got our Boomkin beams cut to receive the end piece hardware. It was kind of tricky. The best way to have accomplished this would have been with a miter box and miter saw, but I don't have one. Or perhaps a chop saw. I don't have one of those either. I've got a radial arm saw right here. It's an old Craftsman, kind of limited in what it can and cannot do, but it did the job. So I've got my angles cut. When I look, I'll need to sand that up and trim it up, and then the hardware will fit over the end like so. So I'll have to drill a hole right there, and I'll have to drill a hole right there and make them fit. But once I have those holes drilled, I can bolt the pieces together, put them up on the deck, and drill through the deck. At least that's what my plan is, which means I'm getting close to having to cut some of my teak up into little blocks, because the spacer blocks go underneath this end here. Well, in the meantime, let's carry on. So what I've done here is to begin repairing some of the teak cap rail. I think that previous owners, in frustration of the leaks that were under the cap rail, tried to pry the cap rail up and squeeze in caulking or wax or whatever the heck else they could lay their hands on to try and stop the leaks rather than take it off and do it properly. And so a large number of the cap rails are split or have chunks of teak torn right out of them. This particular one had, right at the end, had a split longitudinally. So what I've done is to, I cleaned it up with a wire wheel, and then both sides, both the cap rail and the chip that was taken out of it. And then I used some epoxy, and I laid the epoxy in on the cap rail, and I fit the chip in, and then I clamped it. And I used a stir stick to help apply pressure evenly along the length of the chip. Then I wrapped tape around the whole mess so that any epoxy that leaks out can fill the gaps where there is no teak, where the splinters have long since disappeared. So I'm hoping for a fairly smooth repair on that. On this particular piece, right at the end, a screw goes through that way, and so it will bite into the other piece where it's got a scarf joint this way. So it's kind of, although it's just cosmetic, it's kind of important to have that piece fairly strong. So we'll come back tomorrow evening and see how that repair worked out. So I'm beginning to work on the cap rails again, get them sanded and fixed up. Right here, you can see the line. There was a chunk taken right out of the end. It was split right out. So I just took some epoxy with some adhesive filler and clamped it in there, and that's the result. So it's back to the shape that it's supposed to be in. You can still see the epoxy there, but it doesn't look too bad. And I plan on using penetrating epoxy for the remainder of it, and then I'll put regular epoxy without any filler over top of that, and then varnish it so it'll capture the color of the teak, and hopefully the repairs that I've done won't show too badly. But I'm quite happy with that. It's an awful lot cheaper than